Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, thank you. Welcome to the Asma Jahangir Conference 2021. Sorry, we are running a little late, so we have to speed up things. But let me say one thing in the very beginning, and that is that we owe an apology to all of you for the fact that the government's inexplicable policy of not giving visas to some of our invited speakers means that we have less than we had hoped for or anticipated. So apologies for that. Second, we have a request that we would like, I must add, the visas that were denied were largely to women and human rights activists, which makes it even less explicable. Second, we would request our audience to help us make some of these conversations on human rights popular on social media. And it would be a great help if you tweet with our hashtag AJCONF21 so that we can become a trend today in Pakistan. Thank you very much. Now, I have a very eminent panel of speakers, some of whom are present and some are on their way. On the stage, as you can see, we have Senator Syed Ali Zafar, who needs no introduction, I think. He's a member of PTI and a very eminent lawyer. And we have Mr. Salahuddin Ahmed, who is the president of the Sindh High Court Bar Association. Welcome, Mr. Ahmed. We are expecting Mr. Qamar Zaman Kaira in the next 10 minutes, fingers crossed. And last but certainly not least, I would like to invite former Prime Minister Shahid Khaqan Abbasi as the keynote speaker. Welcome, Mr. Abbasi. Our topic of discussion today is accountability or victimization, question mark. I don't have to dilate too much on the fact that accountability has become a very, very controversial issue in Pakistan, not just in the current times, but almost from the day the process was initiated. And today our speakers will enlighten us on the pros and cons of this process and how it is playing out. Sorry, I forgot Mr. Haider Rasool Mirza, who is a NAB expert and an advocate of the Supreme Court. Apologies, sir. So without further ado, I would like to invite, as a compensation, Mr. Haider Rasool Mirza to come and deliver his speech.
Thank you very much, Ji. I thank the Asma Jahangir Foundation, Supreme Court Bar, Pakistan Bar Council, Ehsan Boon Saab, Tar Saab, and all the distinguished guests, panelists. A very good afternoon and Assalamu alaikum. The topic that I would be speaking on is accountability, and when we talk about accountability, it would be appropriate for us to trace the history of this accountability process. And if we go into the recent past, we see that we had the Ihtisab Act 97. We saw that the then political opposition complained of being victimized by that Ihtisab Act. Then we saw the Musharraf era, where we were introduced with the National Accountability Ordinance, and now we have the National Accountability Bureau as a result of that ordinance. And again we saw that the then political opposition was victimized. And later on, post 18th Amendment, we saw a vacuum. We saw a silence on part of the Accountability Bureau, and that vacuum seems to have been filled by the suo motu jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. We saw 2 chairmen, NAB, being sent home. And then in the recent past, we again see the political opposition complaining of the accountability process being used as a tool for victimization. One thing which comes out in my understanding as something which is common, that corruption is an issue, and everyone agrees with it that this is an issue. The only problem seems to be the way this issue is addressed. The problem seems to be in using the National Accountability Bureau as a tool by every incumbent government, every government using it for accountability of others, not their own. And that is where the issue lies, in my opinion. In my opinion, when we talk about the process of accountability, it has to be objective. It has to be something which should be seen to be fair. It should be something which should be seen to be across the board. But that, unfortunately, is not what we see in reality. Unfortunately, we see the Accountability Bureau also realizing its importance as a tool for victimization. They perhaps have appreciated the fact that every government needs us. Perhaps every government cannot operate against its political opposition without us. There are numerous examples which I believe nobody needs to repeat. Recently, we also saw the Honorable Supreme Court giving observations to this effect. This is not my view as a lawyer. This is the observation of the Supreme Court of Pakistan, observing recently while granting bail to Khaja Saad Rafiq Saab and Khaja Salman Rafiq Saab. And the Supreme Court observed that the National Accountability Bureau is exercising unfettered powers, misusing its authority, ignoring the constitutional freedoms of the people and their liberty, and being used as a tool for victimization, and they also use the word political engineering. But interestingly, the reference in which this order was being passed was not quashed. Bail was granted, but the observations of such a scathing nature were termed as tentative. And now comes the other aspect, inaction on part of the legislature. What did the legislature do to hold the Accountability Bureau accountable in light of such observations? And I believe it's the inaction on part of the legislature in the recent past that has led to that vacuum and that has led to that lack of debate on regulating the accountability process. The debate is now unfortunately shifting towards victimization because regulation of the accountability process has not been put to the real debate. Every institution needs to be independent, but independence should not be unfettered. Independence has to be regulated. Regulation should come from the legislature. Till date, approximately 22 years have passed. We don't have any rules and regulations regarding the Accountability Bureau. The chairman has vast powers to arrest, to detain. We know the FIA cannot arrest in inquiry. We know the anti-corruption department will not arrest during an inquiry, but we don't know whether NAB will arrest during a complaint verification, or will arrest during an inquiry, or will it arrest during an investigation. Whimsical, arbitrary exercise of power is the issue. That needs to be regulated if you want to get rid of this victimization process. You don't need to get rid of the accountability process. You don't need to get rid of the accountability laws. You need to regulate the laws. You need to hold them accountable for their excesses. You need to legislate in a manner which allows the institutional regulation should be focused on not curbing the independence of an institution, but regulating the institution under the rule of law. And that is what the only place where this can be done in an objective manner is the legislature. It is the job of the legislature, and unfortunately, the recent history has been when some amendments have been introduced, they have been person-specific, alleged to be. And recently, I think the Second and the Third Amendment ordinances of 21 need to be and deserve to be mentioned. Blatant person-specific ordinances, legislation, bypassing the legislature. The incumbent government wants the chairman to continue, the prosecutor general to continue, but they don't want to legislate and regulate their powers. They don't want to regulate their powers to arrest, detain, form a reference. Keeping this in mind, I believe the vacuum should not be filled by the Honorable Supreme Court or the High Courts. They should be interpreting what the legislature intends, what the legislature intends to do, and that should be interpreted through the judgments, and that is how, in the long run, there may be a possibility for regulating the accountability process without any complaints of victimization. Every accused person claims to be a victim. Every accused person will complain. But when you focus on the rule of law, rather than political engineering, rather than forcing people to change their loyalties, rather than using the accountability process as a threat, I believe the legislature's inaction can also be, in my humble view, attributed to this threat. That the legislators are also subjected to this one-sided, lopsided accountability. The moment they advance towards any legislative bill introducing any regulatory process, I believe they are also threatened by the same bureau that, you know what, there is a file, there is a reference, there is a complaint. I believe that rules and regulations regulating the Accountability Bureau are an hour of the need of the hour. I believe that the legislature has to come to this, because all of them have been a victim in one era or the other. I believe there has to be some consensus on how to legislate on this important issue. And I, again, emphasize that the debate should not move towards getting rid of accountability. The debate should move towards regulating accountability laws and regulating those institutions which are all empowered to hold everyone accountable. For example, it is in the interest of public when you talk about cheating public at large. It is in the interest of public when they feel that comfort that, yes, if I am cheated by someone or if we all are cheated by somebody, then we have some recourse to justice. But when you talk about misuse of authority, when you talk about the offense of asset beyond means, you see they are used in a very biased and partisan way. Any bureaucrat, any officer who has to do his job feels threatened. His ability to serve the state is under threat when he thinks about the magnitude of a project or the governmental body which he's heading. He feels threatened that, you know what, if I sign this file, I will be subjected to this victimization in the future. I won't do it, somebody else needs to do it. So the impact of this lopsided, arbitrary, whimsical exercise of power, the real victim seems to be the state. The real victim seems to be the state, and that is the reason why I urge. We have two eminent legislators already in the panel, and I would urge them to reach a consensus on regulating this accountability process rather than getting rid of this accountability process, and I think that is what should be the way forward. I thank you all once again, and it was an honor to be a part of this function and the conference. Thank you very much.
The wonders of technology. My mic isn't working, so I've had to come up here. Sorry. I want to welcome Mr. Kamar Zaman Kaira, Der Aaye Durust Aaye. He needs no introduction. He's a PPP leader and a very prominent leader at that. And we can't seem to get rid of him on TV these days. But anyway, I won't hold that against him. In any case, let us proceed quickly to our next speaker, because time is a constraint. And I would like to invite Mr. Haider Rasool Mirza NAB expert and advocate, Supreme Court.
He just spoke.
Sorry?
He just spoke. आपने
नहीं,
शाहिद का काम को admit करना है?
सलाउद्दीन अहमद किया ना.
नहीं नहीं Heather Rasool spoke. He just
Abhi
spoke.
the person, sorry, I've got it mixed up. Mr. Mirza has just spoken. I want to invite Mr. Salahuddin Ahmed to come and deliver his thoughts on the subject. Thank you.
Learned panelists, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be invited here today to speak at the Asma Jahangir Conference for 2001. I'd like to congratulate, first of all, the Asma Jahangir Foundation and AGHS and all the other, I see the President of the Supreme Court Bar, Mr. S.N. Boone here. I'd like to congratulate all of them for holding this conference. And just from yesterday's proceedings, it seems that the conference is running very close to Asma Jahangir's spirit. It's already stirred a hornet's nest, and I can just imagine her sitting up in heaven, puffing on a bidi and laughing in that cackling manner that she had. So I'd like to congratulate the organizers. Coming towards the topic, as far as NAB is concerned, and whether it is following a regime of accountability or of victimization, I think it's important to look at the history. And NAB is a continuation of laws that started back in Ayub Khan's era from Ebdo and Proda, etc. And they went on, there was the Ehtasab Ordinance, and this is the current new avatar. The very purpose of NAB, and I think when we talk about reforming accountability, we have to understand the history of the NAB ordinance itself. And the very purpose of NAB from the very beginning was political engineering. That is the reason why General Pervez Musharraf brought it in. The initial chairman of NAB was General Amjad, I think, who was the first chairman who was rather naive in his views. And when he tried to pursue even-handed accountability and he went after some political bigwigs that General Musharraf wanted to cultivate, he was unceremoniously let go of, and then NAB continued along the path for which it was designed. Now, why do I say that the very basis and foundation of NAB is political engineering? Because quite clearly it was unconstitutional to begin with. Now, there's Article 12 of the Constitution, which says that nothing will be an offense. No person will be tried for a criminal offense if it was not a criminal offense at the time that he committed that act. That's basic. अगर उस वक्त वो जुर्म ही नहीं था, तो उसके खिलाफ मुझे कोई सजा नहीं मिल सकती. Dusra, the other part of Article 12 of the Constitution says that nobody shall be prescribed a greater punishment than what was prescribed at the time that he committed the offense. Now, the NAB ordinance does both, right? The NAB ordinance creates new offenses. Like, for example, willful bank default, etc., was made a NAB offense, although it was never an offense previously. And it also enhanced punishments for offenses such as corruption, etc. They existed, there were laws that punished them, but the NAB ordinance enhanced those penalties. And it did so with retrospective effect. So it was in clear violation of the Constitution, and therefore people were, and to this date, Mir Shakil Rahman, for example, spent nearly a year in jail for an offense that was alleged to have been committed about 15 years before the NAB ordinance was promulgated. He was being tried under NAB laws for an offense that was alleged to have been committed when the NAB ordinance didn't exist. The other unconstitutional aspect of the NAB ordinance was that it allowed the NAB chairman an arbitrary discretion to decide what cases would be prosecuted under the NAB regime and what cases would be left to the ordinary criminal laws. So you had a lot of these cases where some people, for identical offenses, for minor offense, seemingly minor offenses also, they had NAB proceedings against them. They were denied their ordinary statutory rights of bail. They were subjected to harsher punishments. And others were, for no cogent reason, left to the ordinary law. This kind of discretion, allowing an individual to choose what set of laws becomes operational against whom. The Supreme Court of Pakistan has struck down laws like these, from 1957, there was a Waris Miah case. Quite recently, 2016, 2017, they did it with FIA offenses, banking offenses in the Salman Mujahid case. But the NAB ordinance somehow escaped that judicial scrutiny. It was challenged in Asfandyar Wali's case, and the reasoning in Asfandyar Wali's case is absolutely astonishing. There are all these constitutional challenges are ignored, and the court holds, and I want to quote this because I don't want to get a Supreme Court's finding wrong. It says, while upholding the constitutional validity of the NAB ordinance, the court observes that the de facto and de jure status of the present regime, this is the Musharraf regime, was recognized to create a corruption-free atmosphere. And this court took judicial notice of the fact that the people of Pakistan generally welcomed the army takeover. And this was kept in mind while examining the validity of the impugned ordinance. So basically, the NAB ordinance, the constitutionality of the NAB ordinance was upheld because the Supreme Court in Asfandyar Wali's case said that the people of Pakistan wanted an army takeover, and that's why we are holding the NAB ordinance, despite its constitutional defects, we are upholding its constitutionality. Now, I do think the time has come, not just for the legislature, but also for the judiciary to re-examine the vires of the NAB ordinance. Now, there is another aspect of Asfandyar Wali's case which bears mention. Now, the other corruption, offenses of corruption, etc., that are under the Pakistan Penal Code, they're equally applicable to the military. In fact, all the various armed forces laws, they specifically incorporate the offenses of the Pakistan Penal Code. However, the NAB ordinance, conveniently, and this is why I say political engineering, it excludes the military from the purview of the NAB. Now, in the Asfandyar, however, it did not, in its original phrasing, exclude judges from the purview of NAB. But when in Asfandyar Wali's case, the Supreme Court was deciding the constitutionality of the NAB ordinance, the Supreme Court said, well, judges should also, we are all right, and it was challenged on the basis of discrimination. Why are the armed forces being excluded? So the Honorable Supreme Court said, well, it's all right for the armed forces to be excluded, that's all right, it's not discrimination, but also we feel that judges should also be excluded because we have our own accountability mechanism, and therefore it is not discriminatory. So it is, I think, high time that needs to be re-examined because we're facing a lot of problems. Like the NAB regime has, they cite figures about how much recovery they have done and all of that. But there is equally, I'm sorry, I didn't see this note earlier, I'm sorry. I'll just wrap up. But equally, there is a paralysis amongst the administration because of this perpetual hanging sword of the NAB. You see, selective accountability is sometimes worse than no accountability because it breeds this impression that it is not my misdeeds for which I am being punished, but it is for my closeness to a political party or due to my political views that I am being punished. So there is no lesson learnt for the people involved. They say, okay, next time I'll improve my political ideology and my political stances. It's not my corruption for which I am facing charges. Now, I'd like to end with this wonderful quote, because I've criticized one judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court. I should actually laud another judgment, and that is the one in Saad Rafiq's case. Justice Maqbool Bakar in that starts with a quote from John Stuart Mill, whilst examining the historical role of NAB in this political engineering exercise. He quotes Mill, and Mill says, "A state which dwarfs its men in order that they may be more docile instruments in its hands, even for beneficial purposes, will soon find that with small men, no great thing can ever be accomplished." Thank you.
Allow me to apologize for all my fumbling today. It seems the smog in Lahore has descended as a fog on my brain. And since my friend Qamar Zaman Kaira has just traversed that smog-filled road traffic of Lahore, he needs to catch his breath. So in the meantime, I would like to invite Senator Syed Ali Zafar to give us his thoughts. Thank you, sir.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'd like to, first of all, thank the organizers, including my dear friends, the Supreme Court Bar Association President and their committee, the Pakistan Bar Council, the panelists, ladies and gentlemen. 1,000 or more than 1,000 years ago, when the Greek people were talking about democracy, do you know what was the most feared form of government for them? Anybody from the audience? Most feared form of government? Kleptocracy. Kleptocracy literally means when power goes into the hands of thieves. Kleptocratic form of government, by definition, is when the powerful get together, they control the reins of a state, and then they loot and plunder its wealth so that the poor remain poor and the powerful continue to become richer. This was the most feared form of government. In my reading of Pakistan's history, people may agree or disagree with it, but in my view, in my interpretation, kleptocracy has actually invaded into the corridors of power in Pakistan. And not only that, but they have legitimized kleptocracy in the eyes of the public. And that is where the problem lies. If corruption of any kind becomes legitimate, if people start believing that they can get away with corruption, if people start accepting it as a facet of life, then the nation can only go downwards. It cannot rise. And that is where the problem lies. The biggest threat, in my view, the biggest threat, and this is not just my view, but when Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the founder of this country, when he gave his first address, he also said this, that the biggest threat to our country is corruption. And I'm sure that no one here, not the panelists, not anybody in the public, will say that corruption is good. Everybody agrees that that is the greatest threat. It's a curse to democracy. It's a cancer. We have to fight this monster. That's also a fact. And we have to fight this monster. It is not easy. The fight is not easy, ladies and gentlemen, because those who have got their tentacles in power, those the kleptocrats or kleptocracy, they will fight back. And do you know how they will fight back? They will fight back by creating a perception that the process of accountability is flawed. It's mala fide. It is to target someone. They will want to ensure that in the eyes of the public, because without the public there can be no accountability. Without you believing in the process of accountability, there can be no accountability. So kleptocracy will try. They will try to create a perception that people will start believing as reality. A perception that the accountability process is not impartial, that it is based on victimization. So any leadership that is to fight this war of the nation will have to walk a very tight rope. On the one hand, they will have to ensure that there is no corrupt person, powerful or not, that goes scot-free. They'll have to bring the guilt of corruption home. But at the same time, the tightrope calls for a balance. Ladies and gentlemen, it calls for a balance. And the balance lies in not overreaching. The balance lies in ensuring that no innocent are victimized. The balance lies in ensuring that it is not used as a tool for political vendetta. That is the balance of leadership. The leadership has to ensure that the guilty are not free, but the overreaching of any institution also has to be stopped and eradicated. Remember, in this fight, and I'll repeat again, because sometimes repetition is important. Remember that in this fight, perceptions are very important. The kleptocracy will try and create a certain reality in our minds, inaccurate reality that this accountability process is only one-sided. They will have arguments, they will have proofs. They may even have small evidences, ladies and gentlemen. But it is for us to clear and find out what is real and what is not. It is for us to continue with the process of accountability, hold tight to the rope of accountability. Not let it go, ladies and gentlemen. Not let it go. Hold tight so that we can actually bring the criminals, the real criminals, to justice. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in order to understand and clear the cobweb, clear the fog, in order to ensure that whether this is a reality, are people actually being victimized, or is the process of accountability real and genuine? In order to clear that, I will need to just take you back in time in the history of our politics and the history of NAB. And the reason I want to do that is because something was a reality before, and that reality is being used by a kleptocracy to create a perception today. The reality of the past is being used to create the perception of today. So I need to take you there. And I call this part of Pakistan's history, ladies and gentlemen, the revolving door politics. Have you ever gone into a hotel with a revolving door? As one person is going in, another is going out. And this revolving door politics of Pakistan is bad history. It is a history when there were two main political parties at each other's throats. One was the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, and the other was the Pakistan People's Party. They were at each other's throats. So in '88, Benazir Bhutto, Madam Benazir Bhutto, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, became the Prime Minister. Ghulam Ishaq Khan was used by the PMLN to throw her out in exercise of powers under what they called the Article 58(2)(b. After 2 years, she was out. There was a lot of tension between the two. Revolving door, she goes out, in comes Mr. Nawaz Sharif as the Prime Minister. Again, enmity, enmity, enmity. And the same president, after 3 years, in 1993, throws out Nawaz Sharif government also. Through the revolving door, Nawaz Sharif goes out, and through the revolving door, immediately comes in Madam Benazir again. She comes in, and in 2 years, less than 3 years, she's thrown out again. This time by her own president exercising the same power. In comes Nawaz Sharif Saab again. And what does he do? This time he says, and it's a historical fact, so I'm not going to mince words. This time he says, I will use ihtisab as a tool to crush my opponents. He said, I will make a law, because corruption everybody hates, and that will look good in the public, and it will go good. And while it is looking good, I will also be able to jail my opponents. So he appointed this gentleman called Saifur Rahman as the chairman of the Ihtisab Bureau. In common parlance, it was the time of Ihtisab justice. Cases were filed against Benazir, her family, her mother, her husband, and we all know what was going on. But this did not live long. Less than 3 years later, Mr. Nawaz Sharif was also sent home, and General Pervez Musharraf Saab came in. He said, Ihtisab out, NAB in. And the NAB law was promulgated. This NAB law was also used by that regime as a tool for political opponent victimization. That was the reality. That was the historic reality. Then what happened? Then what happened was that our great leaders of the two parties that were fighting sat together somewhere. Where did they sit? They sat in the House of Parliament in London. And they came up with an agreement. Just 5 minutes. They came up with an agreement. And they said, no more victimization. We have been victimizing each other. They admitted in the document itself that we have been victimizing each other. No more victimization. And we will make it more transparent by having a chairman appointed by the leader of the opposition and the leader of the House together. So they said we will have an independent chairman, and therefore everything will be all right. When they came back in power, after Musharraf was gone, they did make an amendment in the NAB law. That first amendment was relating to the appointment of the chairman. But what they did not do, ladies and gentlemen, what they did not do is equally important. There were many lacunas in the law, many gaps, biddatein, due to which that law could have been abused. They opted not to change those laws in NAB, in spite of being in power for ages. I remember, ladies and gentlemen, same place, Awari, not here, but next building. We were having a conference under the auspices of Supreme Court Bar Association of Pakistan. I think Mr. Kaira was also there. And we called upon the political parties of the time, and we said, please amend the laws so that we can make them more transparent. Please make sure that we don't lose this accountability process to perceptions. But what did the PMLN say? There is no need. The law is clear. It is unambiguous. We will not change it. So the law was not changed. Ladies and gentlemen, when we came, I've got a thing, I had some 10 minutes to go, but I'll try and close this now in 5 minutes. So ladies and gentlemen, when we came in 2018, we inherited this law. The current government inherited this law. And we inherited the lacunas. But one thing was clear, that in these 3 years period, we said we are not going to spare anyone. We are going to change the perception at least. The perception that the powerful are not going to be held accountable. We said we will leave NAB to reach out and touch kleptocracy if they can. And we let that happen. So the perception, the positive reality today is that amongst the general public, everybody now is fearful of NAB. It is fearful that corruption will not be allowed to be, nobody will be allowed to get away with corruption. That powerful can also be prosecuted. But at the same time, having made this point, the perception is still there. Even while I was coming into the hall and talking to a few people, the perception was still there that no, this accountability process is not as transparent. We heard two of our very learned panelists also say the same thing. So what is the job of the government now? The job is first to identify why this perception is still persisting. It is an inaccurate perception. It is not correct, because what we want to do is make sure that everybody who's corrupt, wherever he may be, is brought to the book. But why is the perception still lingering? Why is the repetition by the kleptocracy that no, this accountability process is not transparent? Why is it still continuing? We need to identify that, and I have identified the 3 points. One, first problem is that NAB has overreached itself. And how has it overreached? It is because of the lacunas in the law. What are they doing? They are taking collective decisions by cabinets. They have filed references on the basis of that. They are harassing bureaucrats who decide a question, who decide something without any corruption, without any evidence of wrongdoing, without any benefit, and prosecuting them. They are getting involved with private disputes. So the impression is being created as if a number of innocent people are being victimized. And that impression is feeding into the perception that the accountability process is not correct. Sorry. Second important aspect is that yes, NAB has certain structural flaws. I would say, as a lawyer, what is most important is for an institution or investigating agency to have a separate department of investigation and a separate department of prosecution, so that when the investigators bring in the case to the prosecution should be able to independently judge. That is not what is happening. The investigator comes in, brings in a case, and the case is filed. So at the end of the day, when cases are not being decided, perception again comes that no, look, because the cases are not being decided, it is taking a long time, therefore the entire process is one-sided. So these perceptions, ladies and gentlemen, have to be cleared. The latest ordinance that we have passed, I agree, it should not have been through ordinances maybe, but the fact is that because we cannot sit together as political parties and decide matters in cases of emergency, for the temporary period, we need to bring the law, we need to correct the law. So these lacunas, because of which NAB was overreaching, these lacunas have been clarified in this ordinance. NAB can no longer, without proof of corruption, file a reference against anyone. These are the lacunas so that the perception is right, so that the perception is finished and the accurate facts are there. We need the public, we need the people like you to stand by us in the matters of accountability. With this, I would just like to quote one famous German philosopher, and he was talking about how to tackle monsters. He said, while tackling monsters, don't become a monster yourself. If you stare into an abyss for a long, long time, the abyss will stare back at you. My hope today, seeing all of you and hoping that our perceptions are changing, my hope and wish is, and I quote in other words, I say that if we keep on staring into hope, hope will stare back at us. So I would hope that we ultimately continue with this process of accountability. It is not victimization, it is only a perception. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Sorry. Apologies to Senator Ali Zafar, we do have time constraints. The good news is that because we started late, we have a small respite from the organizers. We can go on till 1:30, but nevertheless, we want to leave at least 15 minutes for a question and answer session from the audience. So we nevertheless have this time constraint. I would now request Mr. Qamar Zaman Kaira, PPP leader, to come and address us on this very important issue. Qamar Saab.
Assalamu alaikum. Ladies and gentlemen, I have requested the moderator that please allow me to speak in Urdu so that I can conclude my opinion in few words. Because of the less of time, I am aware of my incapacity to be good in English. Thank you. बहुत शुक्रिया. ख़वातीन व हज़रात, मैं आसमा जहांगीर फाउंडेशन के तमाम ऑर्गेनाइजर्स का, तमाम आज के साथियों का, सुप्रीम कोर्ट बार एसोसिएशन का, तमाम पार्टिसिपेंट्स का शुक्रिया अदा करता हूँ. आसमा जहांगीर ने अपनी ज़िंदगी में वो पौधा लगाया और आज आप उसको सींच रहे हैं, उसको आगे लेके चल रहे हैं, जो किसी महज़्ज़ब मुआशरे में एक सही मानों में सिविल सोसाइटी, एक महज़्ज़ब मुआशरा क्रिएट करने के लिए बहुत ज़रूरी फैक्टर है. पब्लिक ओपिनियन मेरी नज़र में दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा कानून, सबसे ताकतवर चीज़ है. कोई कानून, कोई आइन पब्लिक ओपिनियन से ताकतवर नहीं हो सकता. दुनिया की डेमोक्रेसीज़ में यही हुआ है, जहाँ तक हमने पढ़ा थोड़ा बहुत. आज का मौजू तो वकला का था कि अकाउंटेबिलिटी लॉज क्या होने चाहिए और उनकी कितनी अहमियत है. और इसमें कोई शक नहीं है कि मॉडर्न स्टेट असूलों और कवानीन पे चलती है. बेहतर कवानीन दीगर अक़वाम से सीख के और अपने आप से सीख के आप अच्छे कवानीन बनाते हैं और मुआशरे को उन कवानीन के तहत चलाते हैं, तभी मुआशरे महज़्ज़ब मुआशरे बन पाते हैं. इसमें तो कोई दूसरी राय नहीं है. लेकिन ख़वातीन व हज़रात, क्या हमारे मुल्क में कवानीन की कोई कमी है? कोई कानून ऐसा है जो हमारे मुल्क में है नहीं? और अगर नहीं है तो उसको बनाने में कितना वक्त लग सकता है? अगर हुक्मरान वक्त चाहे और पार्लियामेंट के अंदर बैठी हुई कुव्वतें चाहें कि कानून जल्द बनाने हैं, तो जो डेफिशिएंसी है कानून के अंदर या कवानीन के अंदर, वो तो फौरी तौर पे या बहुत क्विकेस्ट पॉसिबल टाइम में वो हल हो सकती है. सो कोई इदारा ऐसा नहीं है जो हमारे यहाँ नहीं है। मसला हमारा यह है कि हमारे इदारे काम नहीं कर रहे। आज की इस कॉन्फ्रेंस में भी हम मुतालबे कर रहे हैं, हम कह रहे हैं कि ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए, ऐसा नहीं करना चाहिए। किससे मुतालबा कर रहे हैं? किससे कह रहे हैं कि वो रूल ऑफ लॉ लाए? किससे मुतालबा कर रहे हैं कि वो कानून पे अमल दरामद करे? किससे मुतालबा कर रहे हैं कि वो इंसाफ करे? किससे मुतालबा कर रहे हैं कि वो गुड गवर्नेंस लाए? किससे मुतालबा कर रहे हैं कि वो अकाउंटेबिलिटी कवानीन को ठीक करे? खुद इंटरेस्ट ग्रुप से? क्या हमारे मुतालबे दुरुस्त हैं, या हम सब सिविल सोसाइटी से? मैं आपसे मुतालबे कर रहा हूँ। तो मेरा ख्याल ये है कि इस वक्त आज जो हमारी स्टेट है, ये स्टेट उस रंग में नहीं है जिस तरह हम आम तौर पे इस्तेमाल करते हैं। हमारी जो रियासत है, रियासत भी वैसे आजकल हम और मानों में इस्तेमाल करते हैं, लेकिन उसके कई माने निकाल दिए ना आज़म नज़ीर साहब आपने। सो रियासत उस रंग में नहीं, लेकिन रियासत का बुनियादी ढांचा जो है वो क्या सिर्फ लोगों के कानून बना देने से, चंद मुतालबात कर देने से? दुनिया में कभी ऐसा हुआ ख़वातीन हज़रात के किसी मुआशरे में कानून बनने से मुआशरे ठीक हो गए? ऐसा कभी नहीं हुआ। मेरी दानिश में ऐसा कभी नहीं हुआ। ये कंटिन्यू स्ट्रगल है, और जब तक आप एक सही मानों में मुआशरा, एक लिबरल मुआशरा तश्कील देते हैं, फिर आपकी लिबरल सोसाइटी जन्म लेती है। वो उसी एक दूसरे को रिलेट करते हैं। आप लिबरल डेमोक्रेसी की बात कर रहे हैं, आप अकाउंटेबिलिटी की बात कर रहे हैं। हमारे यहाँ बहुत सारे इदारे बनाए जाते हैं। पुलिस ख़राब हुई तो हमने एलीट फोर्स बना दी, एलीट फोर्स ख़राब हुई तो हमने डॉल्फिन फोर्स बना दी, फिर हमने मोटरवे के ऊपर नई पुलिस बना दी। सो बहुत सारे, इसी तरह अदालतों के अंदर काम डिले हुआ तो हमने रैपिड अदालतें बना दी ताकि जल्दी काम हो सके। कुछ अर्सा तक तो वो काम करते हैं, फिर वो हमारे जैसे हो जाते हैं, क्योंकि अल्टीमेटली उस मुआशरे ने उनको सक इन कर लेना होता है, उनको अपने जैसा बना लेना होता है। तो बुनियादी लड़ाई क्या है, बुनियादी मसला क्या है? आप जिन जजेस से ये मुतालबा कर रहे हैं, क्या उनका अपना बिलीव उस पर है, और उनको क्या आपका और मेरा खौफ है कि अगर वो इंसाफ नहीं करेंगे तो हम उनके खिलाफ सड़कों पे खड़े हो जाएंगे? क्या उन सियासतदानों से जिनसे हम मुतालबे कर रहे हैं, क्या उनको मेरा और आपका ये खौफ है कि अगर उन्होंने सही मानों में सियासत न की तो आप और मैं उनके खिलाफ खड़े हो जाएंगे? क्या हमारी एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन को यह है, क्या हमारी फौज को यह है? दुनिया के किसी मुआशरे में ऐसा नहीं हुआ कि खाली सरमन से, खाली लेक्चर से चीज़ें ठीक हो गई। एक स्ट्रगल है, और मेरा ख्याल यह है दुनिया में मुआशरे डेमोक्रेटाइज हुए हैं। डेमोक्रेसी ने डेमोक्रेटाइज नहीं किया मुआशरों को। जमहूरियतें मुआशरों में आई हैं, जमहूरी इदारों ने जमहूरियत पैदा नहीं की है। सो एक स्ट्रगल है, हम उस स्ट्रगल में कोई चीज़ मिस कर रहे हैं। और पाकिस्तान जब बना था ना जी, तो हिंदुस्तान की तकसीम के जो मुखालफीन थे, उनमें से कुछ साहिब अक्ल लोग थे, बड़े कमाल के लोग भी थे, हमारा उनसे बड़ा शदीद इख्तलाफ हुआ। उन्होंने बहुत सारे इश्यूज़ कहे थे, और इस पर भी कहा था ये जो मिस गवर्नेंस है और करप्शन है, और उस पर उन्होंने ये कहा था कि पाकिस्तान ग्रेजुअली मार्शल लॉ की आमाजगा बनेगा। कमज़ोर गवर्नेंस इस माशरे को ख़राब करेगी, यहाँ की बिजनेस एलीट्स इसको लूटेगी। ग्रेजुअली इस मुल्क के ताकतवर लोग करप्शन में इन्वॉल्व होंगे, और ये करप्शन ज़्यादा सोसाइटी बन जाएगी। आज 74 साल बाद अगर आप खड़े होकर देख, उनकी बहुत सारी बातें और भी हैं जो सच साबित हो गई। अगर आज अकाउंटेबिलिटी के हवाले देखें तो उनकी ये बात भी बिल्कुल सच है। और क्या ये मुमकिन हो पाएगा? बिल्कुल। आसमा जहांगीर फाउंडेशन हो या इस तरह की और बहुत सारी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस, ये पब्लिक अवेयरनेस की बात कर रही हैं, पब्लिक ओपिनियन बिल्ड कर रहे हैं, और पब्लिक ओपिनियन के साथ ही पब्लिक प्रेशर बिल्ड होगा। मेरा ज़ाती ख्याल ये है कि मैं तो ज़ाती तौर पे ये समझता हूँ कि लोग अल्लाह से भी नहीं डरते। सबसे बड़ा खौफ ये हमारे मजहबी लोग या हम जैसे लोग, हम कहते हैं ना अल्लाह से डरो, बड़ा मुआशरा। आजकल हमारी हुकूमत भी जो है वो मदीने की रियासत की बातें कर रही है, और आजकल नए नए ख्यालात शुरू हो रहे हैं। तो ख़वातीन व हज़रात, अल्लाह से लोग नहीं डरते। अगर अल्लाह से डरें तो फिर अकेले 2-4 बंदे बैठ के किसी कमरे में कोई गुनाह ना करें, कोई गलती ना करें, क्योंकि वो हर जगह है। तसव्वुर हमारा ये है। लोग पब्लिक ओपिनियन से डरते हैं, वही गुनाह, वही गलती जाके पब्लिक में करने से एतराज़ करते हैं। ये मुमकिन नहीं है। इसी तरह आपका जो कल्चरल लॉज होते हैं वो बड़े पावरफुल होते हैं। एक बंदा जो बड़ा बदमाश है, बड़ा खौफनाक किस्म का क्रिमिनल है, वो पब्लिक ओपिनियन को खातर में नहीं लाता, लेकिन आपका कल्चर है कि अगर आप उसे कहें कि तुम लंगोटी बांध के इस बाजार में से गुजर जाओ, तो ये कल्चरल नॉर्म के अगेंस्ट है, वो नहीं जाएगा। वो बंदा मारते हुए देर नहीं करेगा, वो जुर्म करते हुए देर नहीं करेगा, वो गुनाह करते हुए देर नहीं करेगा, लेकिन कल्चर के खिलाफ उसको बहुत सारे काम करते हुए उनको रोकना पड़ेगा। सो हमें देखना होगा कि क्या ये लिंक मिस किए बगैर हम सिर्फ अकाउंटेबिलिटी ठीक कर लेंगे, एहतसाब ठीक हो पाएगा? अगर आपकी फौज नहीं मानेगी, अगर आपकी अदलिया नहीं मानेगी, अगर आपकी सियासी जमातें इसके लिए गेयरअप नहीं होंगी, और वो क्यों होंगे? जो इक़्तिदार में बैठे हैं वो सिर्फ गवर्नमेंट नहीं, जो पॉलिटिकल लीडरशिप होती है या आपकी लीडरशिप है या फौज की लीडरशिप है, ये सारे पब्लिक ओपिनियन के लोग हैं, ये सारे के सारे खुद इंटरेस्ट ग्रुप्स हैं। इन्हें क्या ज़रूरत है इस समाज को तब्दील करने की? ये एट इट्स ओन, यानी एक बंदा जो हुक्मरान बना है लीगल मीन से नहीं, एक बंदा जो किसी ओहदे पे बैठा है किसी जायज़ तरीके से नहीं। आप बहुत सारे वकला बैठे हैं, हो सकता है आप मुतमईन हो, मैं तो आपके जजेस के एलिवेशन पे मुतमईन नहीं हूं, मैं तो नहीं समझता कि आप किसी सही तरीके से जजेस बनाते हैं, और फिर आप उनसे तवक्को करते हैं कि वो इंसाफ करेंगे। इसी तरह हमारी सोसाइटी में जब मैं इलेक्शन में जाता हूं तो कोई बंदा मुझे ये नहीं पूछता कि तू इस काबिल है कि नहीं, तेरा कल माजी क्या था। मेरे ऊपर कोई समाजी दबाव नहीं है, इसीलिए मैं डटाई के साथ गलती करता हूं, गलत काम करता हूं, और फिर आप वकला मुझे डिफेंड करते हैं, मैं अदालतें मैनेज करता हूं और निकल जाता हूं उससे। और ख़ुद बहुत सारे ताकतवर लोग अपनी मर्जी के फैसले कराते हैं। फौज वालों को तो पूछना ही मुमकिन नहीं है, क्योंकि वो ताकतवर है, बंदूक वाला हमेशा ताकतवर होता है। लेकिन दुनिया में पब्लिक ओपिनियन ही इवॉल्व हुआ है। आज दुनिया की, मेरी आखिरी गुजारिश यह है कि आज दुनिया की जो महज़ब रियासतें हैं, वहाँ पे जब तक आप अपनी ओवरऑल गवर्नेंस को दुरुस्त नहीं करते, आप समाज के अंदर जिन लोगों को अपनी ड्यूटीज़ असाइन की हुई हैं, आप उनके ऊपर चेक नहीं रखते, और वो चेक खाली ज़बानी नहीं है, वो चेक खाली अदालती नहीं है, क्योंकि आपने बहुत अच्छे कानून बना लिए, आपने मुझे पकड़ लिया, मैं जायज़ मुजरिम हूँ, पकड़ा गया। मेरा इन्वेस्टिगेशन करने वाला और मेरा इंसाफ करने वाला कौन है? वो अगर मेरे जैसा होगा या मेरे जैसा मैनेज होने वाला होगा तो वो हो जाएगा। ख़वातीन और हज़रात, ये वो वाहिद काम है जो हम मिस कर रहे हैं, और इसकी तरफ ये सिर्फ सियासी जमातों का, लीडरशिप सियासी जमातों ने करनी है, सियासी जमातों का काम है, सिविल सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस का काम है, इसमें हमारे उलमा का काम है, इसमें हमारे असातिज़ा का काम है। आप ज़रा गौर कीजिए, आज हमारी सोसाइटी मॉरली, एथिकली आज से 40 साल, 35 साल, 50 साल पहले जैसी है। मटेरियली वी हैव ग्रोन अ लॉट, हमने कम ग्रो नहीं किया, लेकिन मॉरली हम क्यों गिरे हैं? इसलिए कि मॉरलिटी सिर्फ अपने तौर पे, इंसान खुद बड़े मॉरल वाला कम होता है, उसको सोसाइटी का प्रेशर बांध के रखता है। और आज की मुहज़्ज़म माशरों में और हम में जो फ़र्क है, जो मिसिंग है, वो वही है। मैं ये समझता हूँ कि जब तक अकाउंटेबिलिटी के लिए हमें एक बात ये भी समझनी होगी कि अगर हमें आइन के तहत मुल्क चलाना है तो फिर सारे इदारों को आइन के तहत काम करने की ये कसम उठा के नहीं, खाली कसमें तब झूठी भी उठाते हैं और अक्सर उठाते हैं और सारे ही उठाते हैं। तो गुजारिश ये है कि हमें आइन के ऊपर अमल करना है, डेमोक्रेसी के तहत मुल्क चलाना है तो क्लैरिटी के साथ चलाइए। जब तक आप क्लैरिटी के साथ दुनिया में, ये मेरा तसव्वुर नहीं है, मैं सिर्फ इंसिडेंट कोट करने लगा हूँ, मुझे कोट ना कर दीजिए कि तुमने ये कहा था। ये दुनिया में बहुत सारे वो भी लोग आए जो डिक्टेटर्स थे, जो फाशिस्ट थे, लेकिन उन्होंने सिंसेरिटी के साथ, क्लैरिटी के साथ काम किया और वो कुछ ना कुछ समाजों को दे गए। अगर हम बिगविटी में रहेंगे, इसी उलझाओं में रहेंगे कि चलना तो हमने जमहूरियत के साथ है, रवैया हमारा कोई जमहूरी नहीं, हुक्मरान हमारा जमहूरी नहीं, अदालत हमारी जमहूरी नहीं, तो कैसे जमहूरियत आ पाएगी? ख़वातीन व हज़रात, मुझे राशिद साहब का हुक्म आ गया, अगर हमारे जहनों में सऊदी और चाइनीज़ अकाउंटेबिलिटी मॉडल रहे तो फिर मेरे ख़वातीन व हज़रात, अलमिया ये है कि हम ना सऊदी मुआशरा हैं, ना ऐसा बन सकते हैं, ना वो कानून है जो चाइना के अंदर है, ना चाइनीज़ समाज है। तो हमें पहले ये क्लियर करना होगा कि हमें क्या करना है। अगर उस पर अमल करके हमारा हुक्मरान आगे बढ़े, और ये याद रखिए, हुक्मरान कोई भी हो वो आसानी से अपने प्रिविलेजेस नहीं छोड़ा करता, उसको हमने मजबूर करना है। ये आसमा जहांगीर फाउंडेशन बड़ा आला फोरम है, और अगर हम समाज के अंदर ये प्रेशर बिल्ड कर दिया, वोट डालते हुए हमने लोगों से पूछना शुरू कर दिया, सियासी लीडरशिप को ये पता हुआ कि मेरा किरदार देख के, मेरी एबिलिटी देख के मुझे वोट पड़ने हैं, अगर जज को पता हुआ कि मैंने गलत फैसला दिया तो लोग मेरे सामने खड़े हो जाएंगे आके, जिस तरह अमेरिका में आजकल भी एक जजमेंट के ख़िलाफ़ लोग बाहर निकले हुए हैं एक प्रोसीजर के, तभी जाके दुनिया में सही मानों में जमहूरियतें पैदा हो सकती हैं। एक जो हमारा ख्वाब है लिबरल डेमोक्रेसी का, वहाँ तक पहुँचने के लिए जो सफ़र होना है वो तो हम कर रहे हैं, लेकिन बाज़ औक़ात वो सफ़र माकूस रंग में होता है। हम एक कदम आगे दो कदम पीछे चलते चलते मेरी दानिश्त में मटेरियली ग्रो करके मॉरली गिरी हुई सोसाइटी है। हमें सबको ये, और ख़ास तौर पे आप जैसे साहिब शऊर लोगों को और हमारे असातिज़ा और थिंकर्स को हमें वो रहनुमाई देनी होगी। मतीउल्लाह जैसे चंद सहाफ़ी अगर कुछ अपनी लावालीपन में कह लूँ, मुझे इजाज़त दे दे, तो वो लावाली तो नहीं है, बड़ी जिम्मेदारी है, लेकिन मैंने ऐसे ज़रा इजी मोड, ऐसे लोग या चंद ऐसे और साफ़ी हमारे अगर सच लिखने की पादाश में सजाएं पाएंगे और हम सिर्फ कंडेम करेंगे तो इससे मुआशरा ठीक नहीं हो जाएगा। ये बहुत लंबा सफ़र है क्योंकि अपोजिट फोर्सेस बहुत तगड़ी होती हैं। तो आज पाकिस्तान में दोबारा फंडामेंटलिज्म की राइट विंग की परवाज़ है। आज फिर इरादे बांधे जा रहे हैं। जो ये सोसाइटी थोड़ा इंच बाई इंच ग्रो की है, आज उससे वो सारी चीज़ें विड्रॉ करने की कोशिश की जा रही है। अगर कोई जमात कोई भी हो, वो हुक्मरान को नील डाउन कर ले और हुक्मरान मान ले कि हम इसके आगे मजबूर हैं, फिर कल दूसरी उठेगी, परसों तीसरी उठेगी। और ये आजकल जो मज़हब के नाम पे पॉलिटिक्स शुरू हुई है ख़वातीन व हज़रात, इसमें अकाउंटेबिलिटी नहीं होती। ये मज़हब का इशू नहीं है, ये बुनियादी तौर पे रियासत के पावर के अंदर अपना शेयर लेने के लिए और मज़हब की इकॉनमी से अपना फाइनेंशियल शेयर लेने की कोशिशें हैं। हमें सबको मिल के इस नेगेटिविटी को रोकना होगा। बहुत शुक्रिया।
The task of a moderator is inherently thankless and risks losing a lot of friends. So my apologies to all the panel for interrupting them when they are so eloquently delivering their speeches on this very, very important issue. Without any further ado, I wish to invite former Prime Minister Shahid Khaqan Abbasi of the PMLN to come and address as keynote speaker. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's a privilege to be here. And I'm grateful to the Asma Jahangir Foundation for keeping the voice of Asma Jahangir alive. It's a much needed voice, especially in the times that we live today. The question of accountability or victimization is something that we discuss a lot, but the reality of this situation remains unclear. It remains unclear because we deliberately cloud the facts. The laws are misused. The judiciary makes comments which are not reflected in their decisions. And a few who stand up suffer, and the whole country suffers. I do not want this to be a personal narrative, but I have stood in accountability courts for 12 years. I have spent 3 years in NAB jails. I don't regret whatever I said or did, but two basic questions remain. What is the purpose of accountability? And what has accountability delivered to the country? The purpose is very clear. The people, I won't go to the past, but since Pakistan came into existence, within the first 3 years we had a thing called PODA. And that became PRODA and ABDO and Ziaul Haq and NAB ordinance and stuff like that. But there's been one consistency in all these laws. They don't apply to the people who created these laws. And the people who apply these laws, the laws also don't apply to them. And that is the reality of NAB today. The NAB does not apply to the judiciary. The NAB does not apply to the military. The NAB does not apply to the business community. The NAB does not apply to the bureaucracy. Who does NAB apply to? The politicians who are declared corrupt in the media, who are tried in the media, So let me just place one simple fact before you. This is the 21st year of NAB. One politician of prominence has been convicted in NAB courts. One. Let the NAB chairman come out and say how much money he has recovered from politicians. That one person is Mohammad Nawaz Sharif, who, please, I urge the legal fraternity here to look at the two cases Nawaz Sharif has been convicted in. Can you quote them as precedents anywhere in the world? And I'll not go into the details of that issue, but that remains the fact that one politician of prominence in this country has been convicted by NAB in 21 years. So where are all the kleptocrats? Where are the ones who made money? They sit in every government that is formed in Pakistan. They just change loyalties and they save themselves. When you have a law which defies every basic principle of justice, which says that I declare you guilty, now prove your innocence. That is what NAB is about. I declare you a money launderer. Now declare that you are not a money launderer. Now prove to me that you are not a money launderer. I have been accused of money laundering with my tax-paid money. With tax-paid money. Doesn't the NAB chairman know? Doesn't the judiciary know that there has to be a predicate offense before you declare money laundering? You can write anything in any charge sheet. I have one case today, the charge sheet is 34 pages long. The NAB reference was 19 pages long. How does that happen? What are we doing? Where are we going? This is the situation in Pakistan today. Salahuddin Saab touched on this a little bit. The law requires me to maintain financial records for 7 years. You are trying me for 35 years. So, I say if you accuse me of something, then you also give the record for your 35 years. I definitely cannot. There has to be, I'm all for accountability. If you want accountability, NAB is not accountability. NAB is whatever, it's political engineering, it is manipulating politics, it is punishing people without convicting them, whatever you want to call it. If you want accountability of politicians, it's very simple. The whole world does it. You don't need special laws. It's about tax laws. The people who apply taxes on the people of Pakistan should answer for their own assets. They should answer for their own lifestyles. What are they earning? If they are earning, then they should be paying taxes. If members of parliament walk out to a 3 crore rupee or 6 crore rupee vehicle and go to a 50 crore rupee home, and their monthly electric bills are 2 lakh rupees, and they pay no taxes, what does that tell you? That's a corrupt politician. Why don't we go after them? Let it start with the President of Pakistan. Let the Prime Minister be next. Let the leader of the opposition be next. Ask them this basic question. how do you justify your lifestyle? Where are the taxes? This is the basic question that needs to be asked. You want to disqualify somebody? You want to apply 62, 63 to somebody? Then use the tax laws. Anybody who's not paying taxes is committing a crime against the country. Most of us think paying taxes is optional. That's the reality of Pakistan. We had an issue in the National Assembly, a new law. We are very fond of making new laws all the time. We made 33 in one day. Nobody even read them. So we were making a new law on appointing judges. I moved an amendment. I said anybody who wants to become a judge should present his last 10 years of tax payments before the people of Pakistan. Let him show how much taxes he has paid in the last 10 years. Because if he has not paid taxes, and you'll be surprised how many people who became judges have not paid taxes, it means two things. That either they don't have a practice, they're not technically qualified to be judges, or they have not paid taxes on their income. They've hidden their income. Are they qualified to be judges? Are they qualified to judge me tomorrow? Let's be fair about these things. The politicians are much maligned, and maybe rightly so. But I can tell you, whatever I've spent 34 years in politics, whatever the government of Pakistan has given me as salary or whatever in those 34 years, I think I paid at least 10 times to lawyers in this country to defend me in NAB cases. Is that fair? What does the Prime Minister of Pakistan earn? 1,35,000 rupees. That's the reality. At least, I don't know what the guy now earns, but that's what I got. 1,35,000 a month. So, there are many questions to be answered here. Victimization, NAB is about victimization. It's not about victimization of an individual anymore, or even a group of individuals, or even a political party. The people paying the price today are the people of Pakistan. The entity paying the price for NAB today is Pakistan. And my friend Dr. Musaddiq Malik is here, he analyzes everything. So I'll give him some numbers, which I pulled off the internet as I was coming here. In 2000, when NAB came into being, Pakistan had there are many ways to measure this, but one measure was, we had a per capita income of $576. Today, it's $1,190. 21 years later, Bangladesh was at 358, they are at 2,097. India was at 443, they are at 1,900. So who lost and who won? I think without having the knowledge that Dr. Musaddiq has, I can safely say, and a big part of this is NAB. I was Petroleum Minister for 4 years or 5 years. Last year, Pakistan had an opportunity to take a decision, a simple decision. We would have saved it at least $10 billion in cash in 3 years. That decision was not taken. Why? Because no bureaucrat works anymore. When a NAB investigation officer puts 2 papers in front of a secretary who has served 35 years with integrity, one is his arrest warrant, right then and now, and The other is an approval statement against the minister. These are the choices given by a 17-grade NAB officer who was 4 years earlier in a college to a secretary who served Pakistan for 35 years. Is this the accountability that we want? Is this accountability that we have? This is happening in Pakistan today. You will never see NAB move against a person in power at that time. If you want accountability, if I'm a 80% plus of politicians never handle public money. They remain backbenchers in government or the opposition. They have no access, they have no control over public money. How can NAB apply to them? If they have robbed a bank, there are laws to do that. If they have stolen electricity, there are laws to counter that. The laws for everything. How can NAB apply to a person who has never had any control over any public money? We made all these amendments. NAB can only be amended by consensus. There are many laws, including electoral laws, that should only be amended by consensus. We don't seem to learn that, and we suffer. NAB is one of them. We made a package of amendments, gave it to the government. 4 hours later, a minister waved them in the National Assembly. Here they want an NRO. And the result is what I've shown you. Bangladesh has raced ahead, double our per capita income. India, with 1/3 the population below poverty level, has raced ahead of Pakistan in per capita income. A big part, there's been a failure of governance, a big part of that is NAB. So there's a lot more that can be said here, but and then I will end with a human rights issue. Does anybody care about what happens to people who are accused by NAB? Does anybody care about their families? Does anybody know that they can't operate their accounts? They can't operate their businesses? They can't get bank loans? There's a big human cost that is paid here. And I always say, and I end with this, you want to accuse a public figure? We are the only people who go through accountability at least every 5 years at the ballot box. You want to accuse me? Install cameras in the investigation rooms and in the courtrooms. Show the people of Pakistan. That's my constituency. Show them if I've been corrupt. Accuse me in front of them, not in closed courts where the prosecutor doesn't make sense, where the laws don't make sense, where the judge has limited knowledge. And when I go to a NAB court, I go with the knowledge that he will convict me no matter what my case is. Let me tell you that. But it's not only me, we still stand defiant because we believe in what we do. We believe that without political leadership, this country will not move forward. Turncoats, hypocrites, people who sell their loyalties don't make nations. And NAB is a tool to convert people into turncoats and to sell their souls. That's the reality of NAB. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. First, let me state that our panelist, Mr. Qamar Zaman Kaira, who parachuted in, has now ejected because he had a prior commitment at a funeral. So he has asked me to convey his apologies. We have about 10 minutes for questions and answers. Please raise your hands and I will recognize you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Is there a mic?
My name is Nawaz, and my question is for Shahid Haqqan Abbasi Saab. Abbasi Saab, you spoke about consensus in your speech, and my question is also about the consensus. There seems to be a good understanding between Muslim League Nawaz and the People's Party regarding national issues, meaning there seems to be a good understanding and consensus between the two
Sir,
parties
question please, not
regarding
speech.
national issues. Why
Question.
don't you both parties find a consensus, create a consensus regarding by-election NA 133? Why don't you find a consensus candidate in NA 133 instead of fighting against each other? Thank you.
Sir, I don't know if this is relevant to the topic, but if you wish to answer. Is your mic working?
Yeah, it's not a relevant question, but the reality is that we are political parties, but we contest elections against each other. On issues, we may reach a consensus. On fighting election, we cannot.
Can I have
I
a
would,
question?
I would ask the audience to resist the temptation to ask any question. Let's stick to the topic, please. Yes, thank you.
Assalamualaikum ji, Farida Shaheed. I want to know whether there is any analysis of how much money we have spent on the establishment of NAB, including in trying to recuperate money from and evidence from outside, versus how much money has been actually recuperated by them.
Do you wish to point this at somebody in
Well,
particular?
I don't know, either Abbasi Saab or our senator from the PTI who's
Sir.
currently in position.
Sir,
Can you hear me? NAB spends, the current spend is about 6 billion a year on NAB. The current chairman claimed that he had recovered 539 billion in his 4-year tenure. The Ministry of Finance said they had only received 1.4 billion. So 538 point, maybe my math is wrong, 537.6 billion is missing. Which the chairman NAB has said that people have repaid the banks and some plots have been recovered. Why is real estate the domain of NAB? It's specifically mentioned because that's where the money is to be made. The most corrupt institution in the country today is NAB. The more power you have, the more corrupt you are.
thank you, sir. Yes,
Sir.
any other questions?
Sir, Assalamu
Any
alaikum.
other questions?
Sir, here,
Anyone?
sir. Rashid bhai, here, right. Sir.
Sorry. Oh, yes.
Yes. My name is Abdullah Malik. I'm an advocate and human rights activist. No doubt we as a civil society condemn any victimization. Dear leaders, मेरा question ये है अपनी 98% जो youth जहाँ बैठी है victimization accountability तो less than 1% की हो रही है. ये जो मज़हब के नाम पर हमारी 98% की डेली विक्टिमाइजेशन होती है. आप जो हमारी होप है, आप हमें बताइए कि जिनको हम कहते हैं कल कि ये दहशतगर्द हैं, दूसरे दिनों में कहते हैं कि नहीं ये तो बहुत अच्छी शहरी हैं. प्लीज़ बताइए कि जो मेरे 98% यूथ है इनका जो फ्यूचर है क्या आपके सेफ हैंड में है कि नहीं है. खुदा के लिए इस इशू पे तो आप एक कंसेंसस कर लें, एक रिकन्सिलिएशन कर दें कि हम इसको किसी भी सूरत में कबूल नहीं करेंगे. सेकेंडली आप एक ये
मलिक
भी
साहब, question please,
सर
not speech.
दूसरा भी मेरा ऐसा है कि सर आप ये भी एक वादा करें कि आप तमाम पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज आज जो कंडेम कर रही हैं कल वो किसी की लाठियों के सहारे इक़्तिदार में नहीं आएंगे. बहुत शुक्रिया.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch any question, Malik Saab, although of course what you said is very relevant. I've been asked to wrap up this session. Let me make some very brief concluding remarks, if I may. I think we have been privileged to hear the wisdom and arguments of our panelists, who are all extremely well informed, and we have gleaned the gist of the problem, which I will try to summarize as quickly as possible. The way I see it, and what I've gathered from today's discussion, there appears to be a vicious cycle of manipulation and political victimization through accountability. Let's not forget, we seem to lack an independent, uniform, and permanent model of accountability. We have had at least 11 accountability laws in our history, 3 dedicated institutions for accountability, and similar mechanisms and departments throughout our history. Now, this points to a very deep-seated problem somewhere. And I think the problem perhaps is, as has been outlined in our speakers' speeches today, there are problems with the law, there are problems with regulation of discretion that has been given to NAB, there are problems with due process, and there are problems with allegations of political victimization. No one can deny that corruption exists in Pakistan, but it is systemic. And urban legend has it that since NAB got into action, in fact what has happened is that corruption in the system has gone underground and the price has doubled or trebled. So simply by choosing a few political leaders of the opposition or bureaucrats or businessmen who are alleged to be associated with them, in cahoots with them as it is put, the problem of systemic corruption, it seems, will not go away. Thank you very much for all our speakers and for their time and their contributions. Thank you for the audience for being so patient, particularly with this very, very terrible moderator who has made many enemies today. Thank you very much. Thank you.